What is the most believable conspiracy theory? Slacker25 said. Not the most believable, but fairly believable. The assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, of World War I fame, could easily have been prevented but was deliberately allowed to happen by militaristic elements in the Austro-Hungarian government who wanted to use it as an excuse to move against Serbia. Ninja Bread Manu said. World War I was always going to happen. Everyone was just looking for an excuse to start. There was a lot of people behind the scenes who had been working for years to prevent things starting it, but a lot of people just needed a reason. Prior to that, wars were good for business. They gave you new land, reaffirmed the people of your power, gave diplomatic opportunities, etc. The problem was that prior to that, mechanization wasn't as big a thing. So people were ready and waiting for the old school war and got the new version. Cannibal Barca said. Yeah, the Archduke was not the most popular member of the royal family, and his wife was openly loathed at court. She was seen as so far beneath the royal family that the marriage was morganatic, i.e., their kids could not inherit the throne. Hell, most of the world's leaders buggered off on holiday at the beginning of July, which shows the level of concern surrounding the crisis by Europe's leaders. Distracted Turtle said. In 1933, 4 weeks after Adolf Hitler was sworn in as Chancellor of Germany, the German Reichstag was set on fire by a Dutch communist named Marinus van der Lubbe, who was caught nearby the building soon after it erupted in flames. He had several fire-starting items on him, so authorities took him in. Within hours, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party seized this opportunity to violently and viciously denounce communists within the German government, and Hindenburg invoked Article 48 to abolish freedom of speech, assembly, and the press, as well as authorizing government use of wiretapping. Basically, Hitler used this as a means of abolishing civil liberties within Germany, as well as rounding up and persecuting communist political opponents. Basically, with the communist seats in German government uprooted, the Nazis were free to do what they wanted, and this is viewed as a pivotal moment in the creation of the totalitarian Nazi German state, since Hitler now had illegal emergency powers to do whatever he wanted. Distracted Turtle said. The conspiracy comes in the fact that some evidence shows that this event was organized and orchestrated by a secret team of Nazi brownshirts who entered the Reichstag through a secret tunnel, set the building on fire, and blamed van der Lubbe. Furthermore, during the Nuremberg trials, it came out that Hermann Göring allegedly claimed to have set fire to the building himself while drunk at a birthday celebration. Honestly, this is the most convincing conspiracy theory I've ever heard because it just makes the most sense. You're telling me the perfect opportunity to seize absolute control of the government and the people just happens to fall into Hitler's lap 4 weeks after he's elected as Chancellor? This type of evil Machiavellian shit was right up the Nazis' alley. Pearson said. Marinus was mostly blind and was intellectually disabled. He was standing in front of the burning building dazzled by the bright fire when he was arrested. The people around him thought he stood out. I just quickly Googled him and I didn't see information about it, but the reason he had heavily impaired vision is because he had lime dumped in his eyes by his co-workers who bullied him while he was working as a bricklayer in the 20s. Really sad. He couldn't find other work because of his low IQ and got treated poorly in the only job he could do. I know someone who knew his cousin before the war. From what I was told, Op's theory is correct. Akagawa said. My elementary school was across the street from the light bulb. We took field trips to see the light bulb. They were illuminating. Really lit up our life. Brightest part of the year. I'll see myself out now, I'm feeling a bit lightheaded. Edit. For the record, we did take 15-minute walks to the firehouse several times to look at a light bulb. We were not shown around by any of the firefighters. We just looked at a light bulb for a bit and walked back to class. Anarcho-humanist said. There are so many. I'm surprised the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. never gets mentioned. Quote from Wikipedia. In 1979, the United States House Select Committee on Assassinations, HSCA, released a report stating that there was a likelihood of conspiracy in the assassination of King. In 1999, a mixed-race jury at a Memphis civil suit reached a unanimous verdict that King was assassinated as a result of a conspiracy involving the U.S. government, a person named Raoul, among others. There is abundant evidence, Coretta King said after the verdict, of a major, high-level conspiracy in the assassination of my husband. The jury found the mafia and various local, state, and federal government agencies were deeply involved in the assassination. Mr. Ray was set up to take the blame. Lane Berry said. The Korean fan death conspiracy, a great thing to Google for those of you that like random information. So for some reason for like 60 plus years some people in Korea believe running a fan in a closed room can be fatal. A conspiracy theory came out that the Korean government actually tried to put legitimacy behind this myth of fan death, just to lower the amount of energy consumption in homes. Considering how prevalent propaganda by governments were in the early and mid-1900s. I totally believe it. Ross 402 said. Good evening 47, your target is Jeffrey Epstein, billionaire financier. He is currently in federal custody awaiting trial on various charges including sex trafficking. Mr. Epstein is associated with some very powerful people who would rather not have their names appear in the news. Your mission is twofold. Deal with Mr. Epstein in whatever way you see fit and grab his little black book on your way out. I shall leave you to prepare. Socklebuddy said. I've been watching videos on this all week and was scrolling to see if I had to comment it. It's insane to me how little traction this theory gets. The detective who makes the argument has a ton of evidence, a great reputation, and makes very valid points in the video. Legit has like 250k views on YouTube. That's it. Tons of reasons. Jason was 24, well-built. Had love-hate relationship with Nicole. Was taking meds for rage and was known to black out and rage. He stopped taking the meds several months before the murders. He had been charged with assault with a knife to a former boss. He had knives on hand always as he was a chef who carried his knives. I should note that one of the main defense attorneys in the case say the prosecution lost because they were adamant there was only one knife when he thought evidence showed two. Jason wore knit caps and OJ never did. The knit cap at the murder was black and had a black male's hair and the hair of a short dog. Jason had a short-haired dog. OJ had no dog. There were pictures of Jason with that black knit cap before the murder, but pictures after the murder never show it again. For years he would go and take off his Jeep's roof during rainstorms and only reinstall it after the rain was over, presumably to wash away evidence. Socklebuddy said. The theory doesn't suggest OJ was not there but rather that Jason killed the two and called OJ after he realized what he had done. That would explain why OJ had relatively minimal blood in the Bronco, otherwise it would have been a mess. OJ took the fall because it was his son but also because he was then also associated with the murder at least as an accessory. Also look at Jason the moment OJ was acquired. Everyone is cheering and Jason looks pissed as if he feels bad for killing his stepmother. Socklebuddy said. Yes, OJ hired a lawyer for Jason before he had ever hired one for himself. Also Jason was never questioned in the initial investigation and when he eventually was he became incredibly nervous to the point they had to take a break and they came back and didn't resume the questioning. Lots of stuff I missed I just typed out by memory. Things like a knife also being in the storage locker that the detective was able to get a hold of that belonged to Jason. That knife had a butt on it that would be consistent with the tear on Nicole's head, so it seems he bugged her head with that specific knife. He also claimed to have been cooking for 200 people at work on the night of the murder, but the restaurant only housed 80 or so guests and was incredibly slow that specific day of the week, I believe Sunday, so Jason would often leave early. He clocked out by handwritten time that evening even though the automatic time clock machine was functioning. Like so much evidence LOL, but the only conspiracies people take interest in are the less substantiated ones I guess. Dramafer90 said. Our smartphones are spying on us. I used to go as far as to stick my nose up at people who didn't own smartphones because they felt like they were being spied on. I thought it was the most ridiculous, delusional thing ever. That was before I started frequently getting ads for products that I had never purchased or ever looked up online, but had recently spoken about with someone. Just the other day I was talking to someone about how I hadn't eaten it in years, but I remember loving President's Choice white cheddar macaroni and cheese as a child, and then literally right after that getting ads for it, when I had never searched anything remotely close to it, or seen any ads for it. This happens to me frequently. Extremely creepy shit that's almost not even a conspiracy anymore. Everyone has experienced this and somehow we're not talking about it more. Apex in the Rough said. Stargate, SG-1's 100th episode actually made use of this. Why would they let an alien make a ridiculous TV show based on the SGC? Plausible deniability. After it aired, should any further leaks occur, They could always paint the would-be whistleblower as just riffing off the TV show and discredit them that way. Also, remember the evil overlord list. I will see to it that plucky young lads lasses in strange clothes and with the accent of an outlander shall regularly climb some monument in the main square of my capital and denounce me, claim to know the secret of my power, rally the masses to rebellion, etc. The way, the citizens will be jaded in case the real thing ever comes along. Peter Ansbach, www.eviloverlord.com. Edit. Try this one, http://www.eviloverlord.com/lists/overlord.html. Needlenizen said. The Coca-Cola Company introduced new Coke, which had a completely different taste than the Coke they had made for 100 years, and people hated it. It was a complete flop. Several months later, Coca-Cola introduced Coke Classic, which was the old Coke recipe. After a while they discontinued new Coke. So what's the conspiracy theory? Well, this all happened at about the same time that they transitioned from sugar to HFCS. By introducing new Coke, having people clear the shelves of old Coke, and then introducing Coke Classic with HFCS, nobody noticed the transition from sugar to HFCS, and instead celebrated Coke Classic's return. Eliminated Hatred said. They were the wreckage of high-altitude sound wave capturing balloons that spied on the Soviets' radio signals. They covered it up by saying it was aliens so the Soviets didn't know the US was spying on them. There's a certain height where the atmosphere is in such a condition that sound waves get trapped and sent across many thousand kilometers because of air pressure, temperature, the density of air, amount of oxygen in the atmosphere, etc. Coincidentally, that is also close to the high-altitude weather balloon's flight limit, so no wonder why they crashed. If you want to know more about it, here is the Wikipedia link for Project Mogul, https://en.m.wiki.org/wiki/project_mogul #text =project %20 mogul %20 left parenthesis sometimes %20 referred %20 to by %20 Soviet %20 atomic %20 bomb %20 tests. Mustachioed Mystery said. Same incident but different theory. I think the crash was actually caused during testing of secret German technology taken by the US during the late stages of World War II and was quickly covered up to not alert the USSR of what they possessed. Near the end of the war, the Allies captured a ton of technology, scientists, and engineers from the war-wrecked Third Reich. The Soviets and other allies raced to capture the most valuable assets to come out on top after the war. Much of the equipment was pretty high-tech at the time, such as the Mi-262, the first operational fighter jet, the STG-44, the first assault rifle, and the V-2 rocket. Many of the Nazis brought over, like Werner von Braun and Kurt H.T. Buss, were major players in the U.S. space program and got America to the moon. I think that after the war the U.S. began testing some really high-tech materials and equipment, and it was afraid of the Soviets finding out about some of the really exotic stuff it possessed. So naturally it chose New Mexico as the testing ground. Maybe it was something as tame as a V-2 rocket or an Mi-262. Or perhaps it was a new project that was created by some of the scientists captured during Operation Paperclip that was absolutely top secret and would alert the Russians to what they truly had. Oh, and the alien bodies were burnt chimp corpses. Mother of Turds said. I don't buy into the moon landing being faked, but I could totally see the moon landing video being fake. The space race was largely about public confidence in the government, so I find it hard to believe that there wasn't at least a backup plan in case we didn't make it to the moon before Russia did. Some means to inspire confidence in the US's superiority. It seems feasible that they pre-recorded a video to broadcast to the nation at a designated time regardless of whether or not the moon landing actually worked out. Almightitla said. Don't know if this counts as a conspiracy theory, but Trump apparently denied COVID existed initially because it was going to affect blue cities the worst. It would explain a lot as to why he initially made it a state issue. It also explains why he convinced his base not to wear masks and not get the vaccine as well as hold rallies in big cities. He literally engaged in biological warfare against his own people. https://www.businessinsider.com Kushner-COVID-19-plan-maybe-x-4-political-reasons-report-2020-7 https://www.vanity-com/news/2020/07/how-jared-kushner's-secret-plan-went-proof-into-thin-air. Apex in the Rough said, if you mean intentionally for the purpose of releasing into the wild by one or more government agencies, I'd give it a 1/10 for plausibility. Disease is frickin' scary, and anyone with the resources to engineer it would most likely have too many other easy-to-jeopardize interests for a pandemic to be a worthwhile risk. The 1/10 is because there are indeed idiots and egotists who would blithely think they could handle it anyway, so maybe. If you mean, created in a lab but released accidentally, that's a 8.75/10 for me. Seems the most likely source of the virus from all currently available information. The remaining 0.25/10 is the possibility that it really was zoonotic in origin. Simo said, what the consensus of virologists have to say about it, when they say anything at all, is that there are no markers of artificial genetic alteration in the virus. There are dozens, maybe hundreds, of historical examples of epidemics and even pandemics caused by zoonotic transfer of novel viruses. That doesn't prove anything to a perfect 100% standard, of course. Maybe the Chinese were clever and sophisticated enough to design a perfectly natural-looking virus to fool the global scientific community, but also stupid and reckless enough to accidentally lose control over it? But if you ask me, that explanation doesn't seem particularly likely. Do Yogurt Closet 7927 said that Mars is the former Earth, and much of, if not some of, life transplanted here, may be accidental microbes on a lander, as this planet became more habitable, and Mars uninhabitable, many millions of years ago. Intelligent species may have reached a technological apex on Mars before it lost its atmosphere and eventually just eroded into an iron desert, far before we grew intelligent enough, or evolved enough, to know what's up. Most believable to me at least. We like to think we're special, but it's entirely possible we weren't the first ones to figure out the fundamental sciences to such a degree of mastery. There's also overwhelming evidence that Mars was once Earth-like. Causes Chaos said, the Titanic wasn't the Titanic. It was its sister ship, the Oceanic. Theory, when the Oceanic was launched from dry dock, a short time after she collided with a Royal Navy ship. The impact position was on the front right side of the ship. The Oceanic was no longer seaworthy and had to be brought back into dry dock for repairs. Her sister ship, the Titanic, was nearing completion, but was visually identical. The names were swapped, the Oceanic became the Titanic. So the new Titanic has a patch job that needs a lot of money to make seaworthy. During the voyage the collision with the iceberg happens. The ship that comes to the rescue was sitting in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean for many hours with their engines at full pressure, not moving. During a time when coal was very expensive, just burning money. Causes Chaos said. Ultimately it was an insurance job, went very wrong. Obviously no one was supposed to die or become the tragic loss of life it became. But the newly named Titanic, originally Oceanic, collides with the iceberg in the same position as it collided with the Royal Navy vessel. Was it supposed to be as devastating as it was? Did they expect a few dents or just damaging the patch on the ship's hull? Anyway, plenty of info around this theory through a few Google searches. Do I believe it? Not wholeheartedly, but it has an air of plausibility. Apologies for format, I'm on my phone. Crimson Marksman said, the CIA knew that were terrorists on American soil and that they were from Saudi Arabia, but due to their code of not informing anyone else of their actions, allowed the terrorists to act. This explains how the US was able to figure out what had happened so quickly. The CIA are still ping Project MKUltra. Why would they release the files if they could carry it out without much of a problem? So that they could deter public interest by making them believe the conspiracy was over, allowing them to kidnap international psychics without drawing attention. Don McMoneagle said, I'm sorry Browski, but do you even conspiracy much? Because if they're shapeshifters, how can we be so sure they're actually lizards? Because their true form is a lizard man. They have been seen by the likes of Obama and the Pope in secret backroom discussions. They have the ability to shapeshift into several other beings such as humans, and house cats. But they cannot just willy-nilly shapeshift into anything. Unless the government is withholding that info from the public. And if they control our minds, how do we know that what we're thinking isn't their cover story for something far more sinister? Because once you free yourself from the mental slavery, everything becomes much clearer. I recommend a custom-made cap with 5 grams protection that can also block out EMF rays. This is the one I have and it was only $444. Solid investment. Outside Explanation 6 said, aliens exist. They do exist. How fucking self-righteous do you have to be to believe that in the vast expanse of the universe that 7.6 billion people are the only advanced intelligence? Furthermore, how fucking arrogant are you to honestly believe that humanity is the most advanced existence in the universe? I mean, really, scientists are discovering new stars every year millions of light years away. This means what they see now started traveling millions of years ago, and as time goes on the distance will be greater and greater for new discoveries. Max Burks said, Michael Jackson isn't dead. He was in an enormous amount of debt leading up to his death. Though he had just been acquitted of his sexual assault allegations a few years before, his reputation as a child abuser and creep was solidified. He was preparing to tour. He realized he didn't have the heath to do it, which would have earned him a lot of money. Instead, he dies and immediately becomes the hottest-selling artist on the planet. Sales of albums, songs, and merchandise soar. A major motion picture about his life is released 4 months after his death, grossing $260 million. His ranch is sold, and he quietly eliminates his debt, salvages his reputation, takes the money and disappears to live the reclusive life he had been trying to live since 2005. With a big payday and nobody looking for him, I'm sure he was able to secure a place to live alone, secluded from the world. ForbTech81 said that it wasn't a plane that hit the Pentagon on 9/11. Planes have wings and would leave a different shaped hole in the side of a building. The hole in the side of the Pentagon was cylindrical, not cylindrical with wings. Even if the wings broke off, there would be more damage, and from working on planes, the section where wings attach are reinforced, and the wings attach to stand out stubby things. Don't really know how to explain it, but even if the wings broke off, there would be something left sticking out. Jerx8 said, for the non-Belgian viewers on Reddit, Jurgen Konings was a member of the Belgian military who stole military-grade weapons and threatened to kill a virologist due to his dissatisfaction with the handling of the COVID pandemic. But there are so many weird inconsistent parts of this story. The story goes that he waited by the virologist's house for 2 hours or so, while having something that basically amounted to a rocket launcher. The virologist was home. He then just returned home and fled to a forest with all the weapons he stole. The Belgian government knew exactly what forest he was in and asked the German and Dutch army for help, so now a grave few hundred military men plus sniffer dogs were searching a tiny forest for multiple days. They found his backpack and so basically started their search from there, spreading out. No trace was found. Forest was opened back up to visitors. No one saw anything for some days. The local mayor goes on the cycling trip the next day and suddenly smells something. He realizes, wow, that must be the dead body of Konings just by cycling past the edge of the forest. He calls the police and they found his dead body, been dead for days. They find his dead body a few hundred meters removed from his backpack. How did the mayor smell something the sniffer dogs couldn't just a few days ago? How did the few hundred soldier not find something that was only a few hundred meters away? They could have legitimately all held hands, formed a big line and walked in a circle around the backpack. They would have literally stumbled across his body if they did that. Why was he in front of the house of the guy he wanted dead without doing anything and then just leaving? Careless 1234 said that Tupac was murdered by the higher-ups in the entertainment industry, particularly rap hip-hop. Tupac may have been gay, and or bisexual, and may have been forced to perform acts in order to get record deals. At the time of his death, he was popular, but not super popular, and certain people in the industry were afraid that he was going to out the secrets of the industry, namely, that many aspiring entertainers have to compromise their morals in order to get work, and thus, the reason why he was killed. Tamara Basil said, I have my own, that ecologists don't know shit how cars, farms etc works. Like, some of shit that I see what you makes us do just be see it's eco, if you know something about X process of making electric cars, but in reality it's bullshit. Don't get me wrong, I know that they are trying to save us and planet, but some of decisions are questionable and somewhat against poor. Don't eat me, I'm just confused why small people are on stage, not big corporations whose make much more shit that kills our planet.